Again, welcome. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Pandemic Work Life, Blurred Lines, a recipe for employee burnout, facilitated by Hope International. This webinar is presented by BCMPHA in partnership with Hope International. We would like to acknowledge that this webinar is being delivered from various locations on the unceded traditional territories of the unceded Coast Salish territory of the Lekwungen, Chongis, and Swanesh nations. We acknowledge that many of you are currently located in the ancestral homelands of indigenous peoples across the province, each with their own unique traditions and history. Next slide, please. Before we begin, I will give you a brief outline of the format. The presentation will be approximately 60 minutes, followed by a break period of an open question and answer period. Our goal is to finish up by 12 p.m. At any point during the session, please feel free to type in your questions at any time by using the chat feature. We will then do our best to address all questions during the session. This webinar is being recorded and the audience will be muted, which means that you can hear us, but we won't be able to hear you. Again, please type in your questions using the chat feature. Also, a recording of this webinar will be sent out within a week or so you will be able to access the PowerPoint there, so you don't have to worry if you miss something today. At the end of the session, we will send a quick evaluation survey to everyone, and we would appreciate you taking a minute or so to complete it. Next slide, please. Before we start, BCMPHA would like to extend a big thank you to our BCMPHA education partners, whose support has enabled online professional development opportunities for the community housing sector. Next slide, please. This is just a reminder that the registration is open for the Housing Central Conference, which is going to be held on November 15 to the 17th on a virtual setup again. So please, if you haven't registered, go register yourself and take advantage of all the sessions and important information that we will share for the sector this year. Now, I'd like to introduce you to our presenters. Ken McDonald. Ken is an Associate Vice President in Hope's Employee Benefits National Accounts Practice. He has over 25 years of group benefits experience, which includes working in human resources for 3 large employers. His experience also includes consulting roles with global and boutique consulting firms and underwriting and leadership roles at a large national insurance company. Ken has designed flex plans, managed the merger of benefit programs for 2 Canadian energy giants, and implemented benefit plans in many countries around the globe. Ken is one of Benefits Canada magazine's online expert panelists, as well as frequent speaker and a media commentator. Charles Carr. Charles is a senior consultant in Hope's Employee Benefits National Accounts Practice. Charles has over 16 years of group benefits experience, which includes working in human resources for 2 large national companies. His experience also includes disability management at 2 of the largest national insurance companies in Canada, as well as consulting roles at national consulting firms. Charles has a keen interest and knowledge in diabetes management, as his oldest child was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 8 months of age. He's also volunteered with BC Children's Hospital Foundation and a local youth group. So now, Charles, Ken, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mauricio. It's Ken McDonald here, and I'll start out today's presentation. I want to thank everybody for coming, and I want everybody to enjoy today's presentation. And let's start by having everybody get into a nice positive frame of mind. So wherever you're sitting, I want you to get comfortable and relaxed. And I want you to take a deep breath with me. Let's start in through the nose, hold, out through the mouth. Now I want you to really concentrate on this picture that you see of the beach. Make a good mental image of that in your mind. Now I want you to close your eyes and picture yourself on the beach, and picture or feel the warm sand in between your toes. I want you to feel the warm sun on your face. Now I want you to take one last deep breath in through the nose, hold, and out through the mouth. And you can open your eyes. I hope everybody feels a little bit better and a little bit more positive. Okay, Charles, you can advance. So I want to start by telling you a little bit about my own burnout story. I didn't even really know I was burnt out until I had left the company, but it was about 10 years ago when I was involved in the largest oil and gas merger in Canadian history. And in order for the company to show shareholders value, during that merger, they shed hundreds of jobs. But those of us that were left to do the work often had to do the work of 2 or 3 people. And for about 18 months, I was working pretty much 6 days a week, most weeks. And I still couldn't keep up with the volume of work that was landing on my desk every day. A typical day consisted of 5 or 6 hours of meetings, over 100 emails, and I still had lots of other project work and other tasks to complete on top of everything else. I'm sure that for some of you, this sounds very familiar. It was like drinking from a fire hose. If the work wasn't grueling enough, I had a boss who worked even harder than me and expected more from me, except that I had a young family and she had none. She didn't have a kid, a husband, a cat, a fish, nothing. There were many days I literally thought I was losing my mind. I was getting pretty good at split-second decisions, but was completely losing my ability for any deep thought. Eventually, she felt it would be better if I didn't work there anymore, so I was offered a package and I left. The day after I let go, my 7-year-old daughter went to school and told the teacher, "My daddy got fired yesterday. My daddy got fired yesterday." And the teacher was a little alarmed until she said, no, this is good news, because now my daddy will be able to spend more time with me. I had about 6 weeks off before starting a new job. And during that time, I was able to rest and relax. My mind did come back, as well as my capacity for deep thought. Now I'm going to pass it over to Charles to kick it off.
Hello, I'm Charles. I work on a team with Ken and various other individuals across Canada. So today, our learning objectives, we want to kind of discuss burnout, as it's very, very much a hot topic and very relevant to the last 18 months of pandemic life. Very relevant before that as well, but it's very much a focus right now. So we'll look at defining burnout. So the differences between stress and burnout. Recognizing the signs of burnout, it's always a key, especially for supervisors or people managers, to recognize those signs in your staff, and then each individual to recognize them within yourself. Why employers should be concerned about burnout, reframing your thoughts, helping your employees beat burnout, and then preventing and recovering from burnout. And then through these objectives, we also have some tools and resources that we'll discuss at the end as well. So this is a bunch of headlines that you probably see on a regular basis, online, in print media, all on the news. Burnout is the upcoming leadership crisis. COVID-19 burnout is real and your employer is worried. Indeed, study shows that worker burnout is at frightening high levels. How burnout breaks are helping staff recover from pandemic. Dating app Bumble gives entire staff the week off to combat burnout. Why business leaders need a wake-up call to take burnout seriously right now, experts say. And this is just a very small snippet of the burnout-related headlines that you may see online or through print media. So earlier this year, in April, there was a study by the Canadian Institute for Safety, Wellness, and Performance at Conestoga College. And there's some frightening burnout statistics that they took from this study. 80% of those surveys reported being worn out at the end of a workday. 70% felt tense or irritated at work. The same percentage said they feel pain or discomfort at the end of workday. So more specifically, neck, shoulders, and back. And that's interesting because it's a physical manifestation of stress, burnout, and many other things. Individuals reported spending an average of 83% of their time sitting while working. I have to say I'm very guilty of probably sitting for sometimes even more than 83% of my time. Women with childcare responsibilities reported more physical pain. 36% said work demands interfered with their home and family life. And people with children or dependents reported more work-home conflicts. This one's really interesting, and I actually think this is very much underreported. That's only 36% said work demands interfered with their home and family life. As an example, I have 4 children. 2 of them are school age, and then 2 of them are at home. Working from home during the entire pandemic, it has become increasingly difficult to separate those demands and meet all of the demands of a young family and the demands of work. So it's definitely something to be mindful of that is very much at the forefront. So how has the pandemic increased stress? I think all of you are likely to relate to at least some of these at any given time throughout the last 18 months or even before that. There's plenty of areas and reasons that there's an increased stress. There's uncertainty, a lot of uncertainty with where the pandemic is going, a lot of uncertainty with health, uncertainty maybe with job security in some organizations. Fear related to all of the same. Grief, and this was an interesting one, but grief can be an interesting thing. And I even earlier in the pandemic felt, there's grief of losing my social life on an early at the early outset of the pandemic. It's something I was very, very involved in. Met lots of clients, met lots of friends when I was in the office downtown. So grief can be one of many things. It's not just a loss of a person, but it can be a loss of many different things, and you can grieve those in different ways. Isolation, very much something that occurred and still is occurring during COVID-19. Increased work demands, loss of personal freedom, financial stress, balancing work from home and KAH as kids at home, or sometimes spouse at home, relationship strain, reduced exercise, poor diet, and then news media. We're constantly bombarded by mostly bad news, whether it be on TV, the radio, through social media, through online publications, through online news sites. There's constant updates in the news.
So why do we get stressed? Stress is a survival mechanism programmed into our prehistoric bodies to prepare us for an imminent threat. It creates physiological changes in the body to prepare us for fight or flight and is meant to do one thing: keep us alive. From an evolutionary perspective, the human body hasn't really changed in the past 30,000 years, but our world has changed dramatically, especially within the past 150 years or so. Our brains are still programmed to react to stress as though we're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. But in today's modern society, most of our everyday stressors are not going to kill us. Well, at least until COVID showed up. Many of us work in chairs instead of doing physical labor. Most of the time we move from place to place in cars rather than walking. And we have artificial light, which really messes with the body's natural circadian rhythms. Our brains simply haven't had enough time to adapt to the pace of change that we're experiencing. Next. So what's the main difference between stress and burnout? Well, the simple answer is employees who are stressed still have hope, but employees who are burnt out generally feel hopeless. Next. The World Health Organization defines burnout as mental exhaustion and prolonged stress, detachment, and a decline in job performance. So, what are some of the signs of burnout? Burnout produces physical, emotional, and behavioral symptoms. Physical symptoms are feeling tired and drained most of the time, frequent headaches, muscle pain. People report having change in appetite and sleeping habits. A lot of people have brain fog and loss of concentration. There's people have other symptoms like digestive and gastrointestinal issues and skin irritations. Now, emotional, most people report feeling anxious and depressed. They feel a sense of failure and self-doubt. And they increasingly have a cynical and negative outlook on everything. Now, with these first two, physical and emotional, employees may be able to hide these signs of burnout, especially if they're working from home. Managers may be able to detect the behavioral signs, though, although it's not as easy when employees are working from home. But things like skipping work, coming in late, leaving early, withdrawing from responsibilities, procrastinating, taking frustrations out on others, those are some things that they're a lot more visible if you are, physically located together in a work environment. But you can still kind of detect that for a lot of people who do have this work from home virtual environment still.
So are there personality traits that are more susceptible to burnout? And we feel definitely. People who exhibit these 4 personality traits are more likely to burn out. Some employees may appear to be highly engaged, especially those high achievers or those that are on the spectrum of perfectionism, but they're often literally dying inside. So they may express all of the great things on the outside, but then have issue internally, and it may be hard to detect. So the personality traits, these 4 are definitely ones more susceptible to burnout: high achievers, perfectionists, control freaks, pessimists. These are the 4 types. And one person isn't just one of these. Everyone can have different parts of these attributes. At times, they may be a perfectionist or a high achiever, but I do like control at times. And sometimes I can be a pessimist. So each of these, am I one thing only? Definitely not. And I'm some positive things too, I would like to think. But some of these things do impact every one of us. So additional stressors unique to nonprofits. So often handling stressful social issues related to clients whose lives may literally depend on them. Feeling an altruistic calling to put in extra effort because they're doing it for a good cause. Putting in long hours to attend fundraisers and special events. And, some of these may have waxed and waned over time through COVID, but they are definitely, that's also some stressors. How do we raise the money when we aren't meeting at these galas or meeting at these special events? At times, you may be paid less than private sector counterparts, which can create additional financial stress. And there can be a feeling of job security being low if the organization doesn't get the continuous funding it needs to operate. So a friendly reminder that doing your best does not mean working yourself to a point of a mental breakdown. So why should employers be concerned about burnout? One big thing, lower engagement. When there are signs of burnout, employees tend to be less engaged in the work they do, less engaged in social events, less engaged in anything. Decreased productivity, so they may have more of a sense of presenteeism. They may be there, but they are not being productive. Higher healthcare costs, and with higher healthcare costs can result in increased group insurance costs, which can increase pressure for the remaining staff, as well as increased pressure to afford those benefits that you may offer. Higher healthcare costs, as I said, increased absence and disability, which then causes a trickle-down effect where now you have another employee who may have to fill in for this employee to do their duties, or at least help with these duties if there's absence or disability, which may in turn cause more issue or more burnout among them, and higher turnover.
So I'm not sure how many of you have heard of the case of the boiled frog, but it's really a myth, which says if you throw a frog into a pot of hot water, it will jump out. But if you put a frog in a pot of cool water and slowly turn up the heat, the frog will eventually boil. Our busy and stressful lives didn't just happen. If many of us had been thrown into our current circumstances from nothing, we may have quickly turned and ran completely in the opposite direction. But the pressures that we face increased a little bit every day over time. and now we are the frog. And if we don't jump out of that pot, or at least turn the burner down, we're going to boil. And that's how people get burnt out. So a lot of people will deal with their symptoms of burnout with avoidance techniques rather than learning coping skills and resiliency. During this pandemic, a lot of people have tried to cope with eating or overeating. We've all heard of the COVID-15 or the COVID-20. There's definitely been an increase in the use of alcohol and drugs to cope. Shopping and online shopping can also be a distraction and a bit of an addiction. I know there's not very many days in my house where Amazon doesn't show up at the door with a package. Infinity apps, I'm not sure if everybody knows what these are, but infinity apps are basically things like Facebook, Instagram, and other apps where you can just continuously scroll, for hours sometimes if you want to. Next. So there's no magic program that's going to work for everyone. Everyone is a little bit different. We all come from different backgrounds, experiences, beliefs. We all live in different environments. We have different sets of values and expectations, and we all have different personality types. Some of the ones that Charles talked about to you, the high achievers, and then there are other people that have other personality types as well. So what do we need to do if we're feeling stressed and maybe a little bit burnt out? Hit the reset button. And what does that mean? It means we need to take inventory of our lives and start doing things differently. Albert Einstein defined insanity as doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So the first step in any situation is recognizing that there's a problem, that things are not working and that they need to change. Some people who are burnout don't even recognize that there's a problem, especially high achievers. They think, nah, you know what? I can do it. I can tough through this. It's not going to last forever. Accountability. Only you can take accountability to change your situation. No matter what your situation is or what your circumstances may have contributed to your situation, playing the victim's not going to help. Now, I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't ask for help, because improving your situation may require help from your family, your friends, your employer, mental health professionals, and other health professionals. But you need to be the catalyst for change in your life. Nobody else can really force you to be that catalyst for change. And only once you've recognized that there's a problem and you want to make a change and you realize you're the one that needs to initiate the change, only then are you ready to take action. So Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So maybe you're feeling a little stressed right now and you want to take some steps to ensure your situation doesn't progress to complete burnout. What can you do? Next. So just like they tell you during an airplane safety demonstration, first you need to put your oxygen mask on yourself before attempting to help anyone else. And if you're not fueling your body with nutritious food, getting regular exercise and adequate sleep, you won't have the energy to help anyone else. And if you've been self-soothing with a bit too much alcohol or drugs, you may want to scale back on that too. And at work, you want to start working smarter, not harder. So stop doing the things that you don't need to do. We all do a lot of things that we probably don't really need to do at work that take up a lot of time away from the real important things that we need to get done. Learn to say no. And I'm as guilty of this as, a lot of other people. I'm a yes man. I tend to say yes a lot. I do have a breaking point where I will actually say no. It's really hard to do, but sometimes you need to do it. Delegate. So delegate if you have reports that you can delegate to. And if you say, well, I don't have anybody that reports to me that I can delegate to, sometimes you need to delegate up. You need to delegate up to your manager or to your leader. And I know that sounds like a hard thing to do, but for most leaders, I think that they would rather try and help you and make sure that you succeed and take on a little bit of work and help you out if they can, rather than see you go off on disability. In which case, they would definitely be taking on more of your work, and it would require more work to try and find somebody to spread that work around to or to replace you. Put the cell phone down. I know cell phones are fun and they're a good distraction, and every now and then you just kind of need to take a break from work and spend a minute checking your personal email, or maybe having a look at the news headlines or something. But what can often you think is going to be like a 2-minute break to check something can often lead to 20 minutes later you're still scrolling through some of those infinity apps, and then you realize that you're behind in getting something else done. So try to limit your cell phone time, especially when you're at work, and concentrate on those important items that you need to get done. Energy management. What this really is just because you think you can fit X number of appointments or tasks into your day doesn't necessarily mean that you should. You need to really manage your energy and realize that you can't do everything every day, and at least you can't sustain that over a long period of time. Decision fatigue. Our brains can only really handle making so many decisions in a day. So really high performers often try and reduce the number of mundane decisions they make, like they'll eat the same thing for breakfast every day, or they'll essentially have a simplified wardrobe. They'll wear a lot of black and gray and things that are easy to put together. Why do you think Steve Jobs wore the same outfit every day of jeans and a black turtleneck? He was a super busy guy, and that was just one less decision that he had to make every day. The 80-20 rule. Now, the 80-20 principle gets applied to a lot of things, but there is one statistic that says that at a lot of organizations, 80% of the work is done by 20% of employees. So if you're one of those 20% employees that's doing 80% of the work, try and push some things to the other 80% to help give you a little bit more of a break. And just get organized. If you have, messy desk, messy mind, if you have 100 windows open on your screen and it takes forever for you to find things, you're just going to be less efficient and effective at your job, and it's going to make you more stressed and contribute to and lead to burnout. So Buddha says, do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future, concentrate the mind on the present moment. So another thing you need to try and do is just learn how to relax and recharge. Mindfulness, a lot of people talk about mindfulness and meditation, or mindfulness meditation, and they use those two terms interchangeably, but really they're two different things. In my mind, mindfulness is really the art or the act of being present in what you're doing. So, if you're at the park with your kids, then be at the park with your kids, and really be present with them. And I'm as guilty of this as the next person, because I've gone to the park with my kids before and I'm not there with them. Like, I'm not fully present. I'm, thinking about an argument that I had with my wife, or I'm thinking about, something else that I feel that I should be doing rather than being at the park. And whether that's, doing work or mowing the lawn or something else. And that's not going to help anyone. So, try and take time out of your day and just be fully present. Like, even if you're washing the dishes at night, it's, if you really just concentrate on what you're doing, you can be fully present, and it's actually kind of relaxing. Meditation and self-hypnosis. Meditation can be really helpful. I've used it at certain times, and have found it to be effective. I'll admit that I don't do it on a regular basis, but I have done it in the past when I've been, particularly stressed and other things were going on in my life. There's a lot of great, apps that are out there if you're not familiar with meditation, you don't really know where to start. And maybe you need some help in having a guided meditation until you're really comfortable in that practice. Exercise your creative side. Like for people that that work with computers all day, maybe you work with numbers and spreadsheets and stuff like that. If you can exercise your creative side in your downtime, it really helps stimulate a different part of your brain, and it can be really relaxing. I myself, I play guitar. I don't play very well. Nobody really wants to listen to me most of the time, but I enjoy playing for myself. I enjoy trying to learn new songs, and it really sort of stimulates a different side of my brain. Because I spend most of my day, working with spreadsheets and something that's completely different from that. And so whether, you are, like to do art or crafts or woodworking or something, music, just express your creative side, and that can definitely help a lot. And I know this next one has been really challenging to do during the pandemic, socialize with friends. I've seen some people do some pretty creative things, and I've even done this, with my own friends and family. You set up a video chat meeting if you can't get together with them, face to face. It's not the same, but it is still a nice little break, and just try to have fun. Next one, Charles. I meant to take that out. So I know a lot about rumination. What you really need to do is try and take back control of your thoughts. I used to be a classic catastrophizer. If my kid was 5 minutes late getting home from school, my mind went straight to like, oh my God, I hope he wasn't abducted. And if I had a headache that lasted more than a couple of days, I start worrying that I had a tumor. So if you're a consummate ruminator, there's a couple of things, really simple things that you can try and do to deal with that. One I learned not so long ago is that anytime you notice yourself falling back into that rumination pattern, just say delete, delete, delete. And usually that will get me out of it. But if it persists, another thing you can try and do is test the hypothesis. So you might say to yourself, oh, darn, I made a mistake at work and I'm going to get fired. So you really need to just kind of think, am I really going to get fired? The answer is probably no. So what you knew is just like run that question again over in your mind and realize that the thoughts that you have around that negative thought probably aren't true. The other thing you can try to do is if you have a negative thought, and it's really kind of weighing on your mind, just try thinking, and saying to yourself, well, how much is this really going to matter in a week or a month or a year? And then that problem that seems like, such a big thing in your mind really can shrink, and you kind of realize, you know what, maybe this isn't such a big thing. Next. So perception is everything. Some people have everything and keep wanting for more and more and are still miserable, and others can have just the bare necessities and really want for nothing and still be happy. It's all perspective. I heard a radio interview recently with Rick Springfield. And for those of you who are maybe younger in the audience or don't know who Rick Springfield is, he was a television soap opera actor and rock star in 1980s. He's been very open about issues and having problems with mental health. But he told a story, when, he was at kind of the height of his career in the 80s. He was on a top soap opera television show. He had a #1 single and album. He lived in a mansion in Malibu, California. And he said he had never been more miserable in his whole life. Now, most people, if they were in that situation, they, would think, well, how could I not be happy in this type of situation? But he wasn't. And a lot of people aren't. There's a lot of people who are rich and they have everything, and they're just miserable. So it's all in the perspective that you put on things. So what you need to try and do with those negative thoughts is reframe them. If all or most of your thoughts are negative, it's going to be your worldview. You're going to look like this guy here in the picture who's standing in the rain, looking down at the ground, looking very dour and sad. Thoughts really do become your reality. If you create thoughts that everything in your life is terrible, and you fill your mind with those thoughts, then your perception of life is going to be that it sucks. But even if your life does suck a little right now, you can take time out and appreciate some things, like the smell of a flower, like good food, like, great conversation with friends and family. And then you can start changing those negative thoughts into positive ones. And if you do this every day, then eventually your life won't seem so bad. You need to start replacing those negative thoughts with positive ones. If life throws you a lemon, make lemonade. One way to start doing that is to keep a gratitude journal. So if you have your health and a warm bed to sleep in and a hot meal, those are all things that you need to be grateful for, because many people don't. And I'm sure a lot of you in your line of work see a lot of people that don't even have those basic necessities. I started keeping a gratitude journal at the beginning of this year, and I list a minimum of 3 things that I'm grateful for every day. Now, some days are going to be not so great, and you're going to struggle just to come up with 3, and that's okay. But some days will be great, and you'll be able to, have a list of 10 things or more. But it really does help keep some perspective on how lucky we really are, despite any of the challenges that we're currently facing. So what if you're already feeling a little bit burnt out? Most people who are burnt out lack hope, and they can't see a way out or how it's even going to get better. And just knowing that things can get better and that they're not alone is half the battle. This can give them hope and enough of a spark to light the fire that will fuel their road to recovery. So if you are really feeling completely burnt out at this point, or you know somebody who is, they may need professional help from a counselor or psychologist, psychiatrist, some other type of counselor. Cognitive CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, or internet-based cognitive behavioral therapy, can be really helpful. There are online CBT programs for anxiety, depression, insomnia, chronic pain that can be really helpful, and they're fairly cost effective as well when you consider, a couple of sessions with a psychologist in Vancouver is probably going to run you, $400 or $500. And an ICBT program gives you access for a full year. Most of them come with a psychologist that facilitates the program, and it's about $500 for access for a full year. And they have been shown to be very effective. And if money is an issue and you're on a budget, or your benefit program only covers $500 for psychologist services, then ICBT may be a way that you can kind of get more help with the same amount of money. Support groups. There's lots of support groups out there for all kinds of different things, and they can be really helpful. I know over the past 4 years, I've had some issues with the chronic pain, and I've been a part of a number of support groups online. Several of them are on Facebook. But just knowing that there are that you're not alone, that there are other people out there going through the same thing that you are, and just sharing ideas about things that can help can be really good and helpful. Developing coping skills. Charles is going to talk to you about a couple of resources, how you can develop your coping and resiliency skills. Journaling can be really helpful for some people. A lot of people keep things bottled up inside. I know certainly I do. Everyone else in my family doesn't seem to have that problem. If they have a problem at all, it all comes out, but I tend to hold things inside. So journaling has been helpful for me as well. And you can either do this by, typing it if you want, but I think that a lot of people have reported that, writing it out longhand with a pen or pencil and paper, there's something sort of cathartic about having that flow of your thoughts, go through the pen onto the paper and get it out that way. And lastly, acceptance. And if we can move to the next. So sometimes life can suck for a while, and you can either accept it and take action to change your circumstances, or at least your mindset, or you can be the victim and be miserable and make everyone else around you miserable. Which would you rather?
All right. Well, thanks, Ken. How to help employees beat burnout. So educating employees is definitely a big one. And part of that education is our session here. There's a lot of different burnout resources, and we will go over a few closer to the end. So make these available to your staff on the company intranet, pamphlets, anything like that. There are some free ones as well. That is just basically a website address that you can provide to employees. Provide links to reputable sources of information and programs, as I just said. Look for early warning signs. So are there changes in personalities? Are people becoming withdrawn? Are they depressed? Are they anxious? Many different warning signs. And use this as an opportunity to make them aware of therapies and resources. And these therapies can be a reminder of, we have a group benefits plan that offers some psychology coverage, or we have an employee and family assistance program that can offer some counseling, or there's other items that's like Ken talked about, CBT, ICBT, or some resources that we'll go over as well. And then consider expanding your support programs for things like this, for CBT, psychotherapy, meditation, employee family assistance programs, counseling, etc. So here's a quote by a lady by the name of Katie Leeson. She's a managing director at a UK-based marketing agency that she tweeted this late last year. She says, "We need to stop glamorizing overworking, please. The absence of sleep, good diet, exercise, relaxation, and time with friends and family isn't something to be applauded. Too many people wear their burnout as a badge of honor, and it needs to change." Some other ideas for nonprofits: use volunteers, and this may have gotten more difficult during the pandemic, especially earlier on. There may not be as many opportunities to use volunteers, but that's definitely something that can be helpful. Invest in employees, so that can be in many different things. Can be invest in them by offering different education, learning about burnout, learning about some key competencies in their job. Providing further benefits. Set good examples. So as a people leader, as a manager, as a department leader, make sure you set these good examples of habits that you should have to prevent burnout. Keep connected to the source of the work. Learn to prioritize. That can often be difficult when you have 16 things going on at once, and then you have, especially if you're working from home and have children at home, you have a baby crying, you're starving, you need to go to the washroom, you have a client calling, you're presenting burnout to BCNPHA. No, just kidding. That's a great thing. But there's so many different priorities you need to prioritize. So recognition, celebrate success, sometimes it's a basic thank you. It's a wow, you've accomplished so much, or something very simple, sending a note. This is actually something where I find knowing someone's love language is very important. If you know what your staff appreciates, your employees appreciate, whether it's something like words of affirmation, you can talk to them and you can address that very easily. Advocate for time off. I think Ken could probably attest to this, that I'm a huge proponent of time off. Not that I always take it, but I love advocating for more time off, more stats, more this, more that. I don't think it's ever a bad thing, and I don't think we ever have too much time off, especially with our busy schedules, if you have family, friends, and other obligations and such in your life. When people are feeling hopeless, you want to help them see there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And helping them see that light at the end of the tunnel is providing some resources. So this is a great burnout resource that is free. It's a free website sponsored by Canada Life, which is one of the 3 largest insurers in Canada. It's a long name, but it's www.workplacestrategiesformentalhealth.com. Free access to anyone. It has many different things on here, approaches for people, leaders. So it talks about understanding the issue, considering workplace factors, the lies we tell ourselves, all of these sorts of great things. Resources for employees. It explains what burnout is, prevention strategies, recovery. And an interesting item that's on there is, am I at risk for burnout? It's an assessment that I'll show you on the next page. So it's an online kind of assessment. It's maybe difficult to see on your screen, but it can be found at that Workplace Strategies for Mental Health website. And it has a handful of different questions. So here's 18 questions that you rate from 1 to 5. So 1 being never, 5 being all the time. And these are items such as, I feel overwhelmed. Is that a never, a 1, or somewhere in between, or a 5 all the time? And it gives you a score. And what does this score say? So 18 to 20, you report little to no signs of burnout. You have the opportunity to further prevent it. So maybe in that case, you're doing well, you're preventing it well. So you can even learn from that. Or on the flip side, 50 plus, you report serious signs consistent with burnout. And this is where you should likely speak with a healthcare practitioner, consider reaching out to family, friends for help and support. So these are definitely things that you can look at. And there's some more resources here even. So it says, whatever your results, please check out the Prevent Burnout resource by searching for it on clwsmh.com. What else and again, look at this resource. As Mauricio said, that this is being recorded, so you'll have access to the deck to be able to see. You don't have to remember all these things right now. You'll be able to reference that at the later time. Some more resources. So LifeWorks has some workshops and webinars, e-learning for people, leaders, and employees. So there's some workshops on coping and resilience in the workplace, resiliency at work, challenging situations, organizational change, some webinars on building resiliency, thriving in the new normal, resiliency for working parents, which maybe I should look at that one myself, and some e-learning for pathway to coping. And this is just one example. If you go on to Google, for example, and type in burnout resources, stress resources, meditation, any of these things we've talked about, you will find hundreds and hundreds of different resources. Charles Darwin said, it's not the strongest who survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most adaptable to change. And Mark Twain said, I've had a lot of worries in my life, most of which never happened. So on behalf of Ken and myself, Hub and BCNPHA, I want to thank you for participating in our session today. We will look through the chat here. If you do have any questions, please feel free to type those in there. Tanya will be ensuring that, and actually at the top of the chat, and I can copy and paste it here as well. We do have a general email inbox for BCNPHA that you can send us any inquiries, and this will be distributed to our team so that one of us can answer your questions as well.
Thanks, Charles. Thanks, Ken. That was valuable information on a topic that is so relevant these days. So thank you again. For all the attendees, this is the right time to ask any questions or any comments. Please put it in the chat box, and Charles, Ken, or myself will be able to answer some of those. And also you got the email where if you have questions for Charles or Ken, feel free to contact them at nat@bcmpha@hopinternational.com, which is already in the chat feature too. This was an excellent presentation. I'd like to thank you for your time today. I'd also like to thank our attendees. And we're looking to have some questions here. We would like to know what you think, your thoughts. And as mentioned, we will be sending the link to this recording and the visual recording piece to all participants within the next few days. So, and also the recording will be hosted on the BCMPHA website and education/webinars. So you're gonna be able to access the recording for this session at any time. As I mentioned at the beginning of the session, I'm gonna throw a survey link that we would like you to take the time and answer the survey. We're gonna really appreciate that. It's very helpful for us to keep providing this type of sections and listening to what our members have to say. I'm gonna throw the link there already. So it's there. It's 11:55, and if there is no questions, I would like to thank you and thank again everyone. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Also, Hub is gonna be sponsoring the wellness lounges at the Housing Central. If you going to the conference, please feel free and stop by the booth, visit them, have a chat with them. They will be happy to answer all your questions and provide any type of resources that you need related to this topic today.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mauricio, and thank you for all the attendees.
Yeah, thank you very much.